everyone and welcome again to RC Fun and Games. I am Ryan and today we're going to be checking out the newly released 110 scale shocks from Injora. And the rig I'm going to be throwing them on and testing them is the awesome Yikong 4007 Patrol Edition, also known here in Europe as the Absima CR4.4. So let's grab this rig, let's jump in the garage, let's have a close look at those shocks and let's see exactly what I'm going to do to set them up for this rig and of course how they perform when I take it out on the trail. Now that we're in the garage, let's have a closer look at these new 110 scale shocks from Injora. And I went for the 90mm shocks. I believe that's exactly what's already on this rig. So let's get this packet open and let's see what they look like. And just check out how cool these shocks are packaged. You get some extra springs on the side and your main springs in the middle, and at the bottom over here all the hardware you need to get them installed. So let's grab one of these shocks and have a closer look. Now let's have a close look at these shocks to see exactly what we get. And as you can see, the shock itself is completely made out of aluminium and it's a dual spring setup. So the upper spring is softer than the bottom one, allowing for a really nice smooth compression. And I've got to say they do feel really nice. The only thing I don't like about them is that the bottom two components are made out of plastic. So it would be really nice to see these in aluminium. Besides that, the shock itself looks and feels really, really nice. Now, part of this kit, you also get another set of springs. I believe these are stiffer than the ones that are on the shocks. So depending on the weight of the body on your rig will determine which springs you're going to be using on the shocks. Anyway, let's grab this shock, let's get it disassembled and filled up to see exactly what it takes to do that, and of course how they feel once they're filled up. Now that I'm disassembling, I also see that this section here is also made out of plastic, and once again I would really like to see this made out of aluminium instead of plastic. Besides that, the actual shock looks really, really awesome. Now as we can see, there's definitely some oil in there. Now I'm quickly going to empty the oil what's in here to make sure that the oil is all the same that I put in there. So let's just empty this nicely. Okay, so now that I've got all that oil out of there, I'm just going to stick it in here. Let me choose which oil I'm going to go for. And I want quite a realistic suspension movement and I want it to be quite free. So I'm going to go for a 30WT. I think that's what I'm going to use in this setup. Now let's get these filled up and I'm just going to start dropping some drops in. And of course extending that shaft to make sure I work the oil right through the shock. Okay, so now that I've got all the oil in there, I'm going to just extend it a little bit and I'm going to leave it in here to make sure all those little bubbles disappear. Okay, so now that I've waited plenty of time for those little bubbles to disappear, I'm going to cap the shock. And to do that, I am going to push the shaft completely in and I'm going to throw my cap on. And as you can see, any excess oil will come out of that little hole. Okay, so now that we've got the cap on, you'll see how it works. Basically, you've got a suction motion. It's very minute, which is going to give a really nice dampening to the shock. And when it's fully compressed, because of the bladder, it'll always push out that little bit, never allowing it to ride flat. Now, with the springs on, this should work really, really well. So let's throw our small spring on. Now, the center piece and the long spring. Okay, so now that I've got the springs on, let's just see how it moves. And it's got a really nice smooth motion. At the same time, it's allowing for full compression and full extension. So the shock to me with the 30WT seems to feel really, really nice. Now let's just see if it works with this setup. I'm going to do the rest of these shocks off camera and I'll be right back once I'm done. Now that I've got the shocks done, let's get the rig over here so we can get to work on it. And to change the shocks out on this rig, I'm going to start off by removing the wheels. Now I quickly want to show you the reason I am removing these shocks. As you can see, they've been leaking all over the place. So the whole back axle is covered in oil, and it's exactly the same thing here with the front axle. And as you can see, the front steering link shock is also leaking oil profusely. So this is something that I've experienced with every single model I have purchased from Yikong, or shall I say Absima. It's something they haven't addressed yet, and they seem to continue giving us these ready-to-run models with shocks that all fall apart or leak oil really badly. So this is why I'm upgrading them to the injora shocks. And in another video, we'll be opening up these shocks to see exactly why they're leaking and if we can stop them from leaking. Now, let me get these screws out so we can get these shocks out. Okay, so now that we've got one of the shocks out, you can see how badly it's been leaking in the oil. They basically have no oil left, and these springs are extremely stiff. So I'm hoping with the new shocks, I should have a much more realistic suspension movement on this rig. And something I want to point out before I move on, there's not many shock kits that will provide metal shims and all the hardware to install them. I have ordered quite a few different shock sets now, and none of them have provided any hardware with them. So I've got to say, so far from looking at this new kit from Injora, it comes with everything you want, and the shocks feel really, really good. Now the only thing left to do, of course, is install them and test them to see if they leak and how they perform on the rigs. Now let me stop talking, let me get these things installed because they look awesome and I think they're going to look really good underneath this Nissan. Now I just want to point out that earlier on in the video I said that the original shocks were 90mm. They are not. After comparing them to the 90mm I've got here, these are actually 100mm. But at least we can get these shocks in loads of different sizes, so afterwards I'll grab some 100mm and swap them out. But I got a funny feeling it's going to be a really good fit for this rig. Now I think I've already shown what I needed to, so I'm going to get the rest of these shocks installed off camera, and I'll be right back once I've got that done so we can head outside and go and test these shocks. So I'm all done fitting the shocks, but I ended up having to remove them again and replace the soft springs that were on the shocks with the heavy duty ones that were provided with the kit. Now I am ready to take it out so we can go and test these shocks and see how they perform. But before I run away, I just want to say a massive thank you to Injora for sending these out for me to test. And of course, if you all enjoyed this content, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Now I will also leave a link in the description of the video where you can find these shocks, and of course there'll also be a promo code so you can get a discount. Now until the next video, happy trails everyone!